Well, who's got some proposals to share with us?
Yes, I've got one.
Okay. I guess I might have one sitting here.
Give me a second to. I'm like hybridizing this project with one for my 350 class.
Cool.
Because that also has to do with 3D modeling. One
There
second,
you go.
my presentation.
Yeah. Cool. AI generated music. Nice.
Apologies, it's taking me a little while
That's
to
right.
try and get this set up.
It's okay. I'm going to turn on my lights. It's dark now.
Okay. I've got a presentation. It's a little bit outdated,
Okay.
but that's okay.
Bring it on.
All right. Bang. Okay. Cool. So just imagine there's like a 3 here.
Okay.
So I'm modeling a character for a game that I eventually want to make. This is like an old version of the weapon that I want him to use, which is like a combination sniper rifle sword, like Buster sword thing. Miles, I've shown you this, not this specific model before, but this prospect before.
Okay.
I'll probably be like showing off in Blender and stuff what I actually like have for this, because the model for this is complete. I just need to, yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, it's a 3D character model I'm gonna be making in Blender. I don't know if I'll be able to have it rigged in time, but that's the hope. He's basically this like he's like a bounty hunter kind of stuff. Honestly, the character is more of a vessel for the weapon combination, which is inspired by stuff like Ruby and I think it's Blaze Blue. I don't know. Just the combination of a gun and a blade I find fun. But yeah, been modeling this sword over and over again for about 2 years. So that's fun. I've got somewhat concept art of him here. The weapon I've already made, so that's already off the docket. I'm making concept art for him right now. I was actually doing that right before class. And eventually I'll be rigging him. But yeah. When I made this proposal initially, I was going to be using Pencil 2D, but I've started using Autodesk Illustrator to like actually do it, which I think is a pretty good. Not like I have no quarrels with it. So yeah. Other than that, it's just Blender. Yeah. Sorry, this was for my other class. This is the main concept that I have right now. Let's see. Yeah. My biggest issue is probably going to be making like the more detailed stuff like these. Oh, hey, no, wait, back. Oh no. Oh, a minute. Sorry, my brain's a mess.
The AI has gone rogue.
I'm too caffeinated. The biggest issue is probably my biggest issues are probably going to be making all the small details like these gauntlets and these boots. Also trying to get the textures for it's more like a pipeline decision as to, because these sunglasses are actually supposed to have like a little tiny design on there that I plan to have an emission shader on, but I only want it on like a specific part. But yeah, thanks.
Okay.
I'll show really quick the process. Trigger warnings, male anatomy, not like genitalia, but you know, like if that's, I don't know, puberty, you're in for a scare. Just a second. If I didn't mention before, this is an anime man. I've got The side profiles, like all I've really got. I'm starting to work on the front. I'm following like a tutorial online, and I'm going to be using this model as sort of a somewhat reference. Beyond that, I got my outline sketch, and now I'm working on the actual details. Yeah, the art style is like Gurren Lagann inspired. And yeah, so that's this is what I'm working on now. I'm planning to throw up like an image text, like a plane with this image up in Blender, so I can initially get the initial like outline, sort of like I did here, and then just model away from there. And really quick, let me try and find the actual sword. Jeez, sorry, I'm a bit of a mess. Okay. Where is the button? There it is. Okay. And this is, hold on, I gotta switch to my actual, I've been using my drawing tablet. So this is the sword, gun. This is the first time I really played around with object constraints, in that I have it so that this handle can like rotate so that it becomes like a sword, without like, going beyond these parameters. I did the same thing with the trigger. And this little doodad is supposed to kind of pop out and like shoot a laser along this. Anyway, that's yeah. So that's basically what I've got so far. It's a pretty novice job that I've done with the textures on this, but I just wanted to play around with UV mapping, specifically with like these this little camera / laser pointer thing down here, and the scope crosshair stuff. And I've got these shells that have emission shaders on them, so that they glow and are all sci-fi and cool. And yeah, that's what I've got.
Cool. Looks good. So what do you have for deliverables? What do you want to have done by the end of the what are you going to be able to deliver by the end of the quarter?
Well, my hope is to have, at the very least, a mesh of the character.
Okay.
Whether or not that's rigged, time will tell, and whether or not it's even textured, time will tell.
Okay.
But I'm making somewhat steady progress so far. I mean, I started the character sketch on basically Tuesday.
Okay.
I've had the character concept for like years now,
okay.
but yeah.
What about if you bring up your character sketch again?
Oh,
just the hand one.
Yeah. 1 second, me. Yeah.
So the one that you did, the one that you just did by hand, like the black and white one with a little bit of green in it.
Oh,
in the presentation.
Yeah. It's actually like, oh geez, I need to go through all my files. One moment. I like my privacy. Give me a second.
Okay.
Now begins the arduous task of figuring out where I saved it to. Let's see here.
Got to get that file organization.
Damn it. I hate organization. No, yeah, you're right though. Did I? No. Okay. I'll just pull up the presentation again. Okay. Sorry, trying to manage like a billion tabs right now.
No worries.
Bang. All right. yeah, it's this. I would zoom in if I had the know-how and if I was, you know, a smarter boy, but I'm yeah.
Let me try something here. I'm just gonna do this. Do this. Do this. Okay.
Let me know when you want me to stop sharing.
Yeah. So, okay, go ahead. Stop sharing. So, we forgot to do a sign up here. So let's go here. Let's go here. I'm just going to go over to the whiteboard for a sec. And as that's coming in, so yeah, let's go ahead and I'll just use the mouse. That's cool. So yeah, go ahead and sign in while we're here. Woo! Wahoo! All right, and while you guys are signing in, I should hopefully have this. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen yet. Sorry. There we go. Oops. It's my soccer stream. Copy there. Where'd it go? Oh, it's on the, yeah. Place image. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. All right. So, I don't know if you guys can all see this. So I've got Andrew's concept art here. And I'm just doing this within Figma. I kind of recommend you guys just get in the habit of doing this. We talked about this in the animation class just before lunch. But I think you can do a lot of work. And this is the kind of thing you would do actually much more in a production, in a studio environment or in production. Is you would kind of talk about this as like, okay, well, what's going on here in terms of the production? So we could say, we just start making notes. And you can just let yourself draw right into this, you know, like insignia. And then maybe these will be like, you know, what else we might say here? Yeah, we can extrude these. So I'm just kind of making some little notes. And this is kind of just me thinking through how I would go about making this. And then you had some note about the sunglasses. But you can start to just do quick breakdowns of, you know, kind of your thinking about actually making this thing. Like, and you'll start to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to actually make this model? Off. Whatever. And then you can also go in and start to make changes. This is the kind of thing you might do, you know, with the team. It's like, well, maybe we can block out these boots more, so they're kind of, there's more variation in the thickness of some of it. You know, you can even go in and just color over the top of this, because this is all just temporary. You know, you don't need to whatever, or we can say, well, it's you know, as a way to kind of just make notes or thoughts to yourself, like, you know, thicker. And so we're just kind of using this as just a note board, you know. I want to bring that out more. Can we? Silhouette. So anyway, you could even go in and do some rough coloring stuff if you wanted to, but you know, you might not want to do that in something like this. But I'm just thinking about kind of the silhouette. Stronger. So, but that way you're kind of thinking about, you know, you can be making these changes really quick, and you're not worried about making it like in the concept art of like going back in and redrawing everything and making everything look good. You can just really roughly do this. Like, oh, what happens if we make the hair bigger? Is that do we like that better or not? You know, and this is the kind of thing that you would really do working in production. Is like you're trying to do it quick and down and dirty. You're not trying to make beautiful artwork, but you're trying to kind of work the design. So I encourage you guys to do this as part of your presentation and process as you go, to kind of have, you can document that kind of working, thinking aspect of what you're doing. And it shows your thought process, and it gives you a nice checklist about things to do and questions to answer. Like, you go, oh, okay, I got to do I have my high-low poly workflow down or not? You know, if that's what you're doing, you might not be, but like there's a lot of detail in here. And so that could all be done with textures, or maybe you do it with a normal map that's baked down, you know? And so that might be, then that transitions over, you know, in terms of when we're talking about getting a proposal together, that transitions over into like your research goals or your tech stuff. So what am I going to have to figure out to get this done? So, you know, baking normal maps. And each one of these things can kind of have its own page or its own frame or whatever. That's something we're going to need to figure out. What else we're going to need to figure out? Rigging, maybe. What's it called? Wow, I'm totally spacing out. That's funny. Oh my God, my brain. I thought about this for a little bit. Private window. Oh well, it's private. Mixamo. So you could check out Mixamo. Textures. Eevee. Maybe 3D paint program. I don't know. You know, whatever you're thinking about. But what you're going to find is that this is a pretty significant project and proposal, and you probably have to prioritize some things over others. Like, you know, you already said, like, maybe you don't even deal with textures and you're just going to focus on the sculpture, you know. But let yourself just write everything down, you know, like just start. And so you should just have make a new page for yourself in one of your Figma sketchbooks or something, and just start doing this kind of process. And it doesn't have to just be with your drawings. It can be with your research, you know, like you might get some visual research, like from your presentation, and throw some of those things in here and say, okay, well, yeah. And you might just make notes on that. Like, oh, I like the way this rusty thing goes around the gun barrel. I don't know. You know what I mean? So that'd be cool. And I would think about what the deliverables are going to be. And so you might just start off by making a huge ass list of everything, you know, that could be, that you could make. I was just making notes on what you said. And then you kind of prioritize and say, well, the stuff like, you know, and break it down by what am I going to get done next week? And if you kind of use that as kind of your measure of what you might really be able to get done, then you can kind of extrapolate out what's a realistic set of deliverables. And then I always want to say too, here, make sure you include things like your concepts, you know, and as deliverable, you know. White box stuff. What else might you include? Tests. Like, you know, instead of trying to do like, oh, I've got to figure out this special emissive shader thing on these glasses, which is part of this bigger thing, and it's on a rig. I might just do some tech tests on, you know, simple things like a block or a sphere to get, but include that stuff. That's all, that could be all considered part of the deliverables. And this will help you, you're not just doing it to show off, it'll actually help you conceptualize of like how much stuff you have to do, like how hard it is to actually do it. And yeah, and I just realized this because when you're learning something, you're really thinking about it from a different way than if you're kind of, oh, I know how to do everything. Now I'm going to think more broader, conceptually, big picture. So you have to kind of work back and forth between the big picture as like the production manager person and the creator, back down to the techie kind of, I'm making, how do I, you know, get these two polygons to merge together. So you have to kind of go back and forth between that. But yeah, I mean, I think it looks great. It sounds like a bit ambitious, honestly. Like, you know, I don't know if you can kind of focus on the deliverable. Okay, character model. Sounds like you're on the right track with it. Like, okay, I won't probably get to textures, probably won't get to rigging, blah, blah, blah. But you could try, that's the thing about doing some research. I think you'll find that Mixamo just works right away. You just kind of upload your model and it'll just kind of work. And then you'll be able to see the character move, which I think is really important. So we can look at that. And then as you guys are doing this kind of work, then you might come back with questions for us, you know, for me or the class, or as you're finding stuff, or you might be able to share stuff that you're finding in doing this too. So cool. Thanks, Andrew. But I really recommend that all of you guys start doing this kind of thing. And I demoed that the other day with some of the, like, drawing on top of your renders, super important. Bringing your renders into Photoshop and playing around with the, you know, screen caps. They don't have to be renders. Just drawing on top of stuff and keeping an ongoing working whiteboard. Because again, you go and work at a place like Blizzard or whatever, or you go check it out. Like if people are doing production, everything's on a whiteboard, you know, so all these notes, this is the kind of stuff that people are really talking about, you know, during the day. And then you might go back into your little basement and start pushing polygons around, but kind of collaboratively, these are the kind of conversations that you want to key in on. Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Who else has some stuff to share? Yeah. Who else has some stuff?
I can go.
Okay, Angel.
Just 1 minute. Okay. So I should probably share my screen. There we go. Okay. So my idea for my final project is going to be like a few different scenes inspired by vaporwave, like the vaporwave aesthetic. I've been really into that since like 2013 when it was like blowing up, sort of. and that's part of the reason why I took this class, is I wanted to be able to make that kind of art. So basically I want to make, I'm going to say 5 for now, but that number could be more, it could be less. We'll see, based on the complexity of the scenes that I make and how much time I have, you know. So I'll make some scenes. I'm going to render them in Blender and then like composite them with different backgrounds and maybe different editing effects in Photoshop. And a lot of the things that I've been looking at, it's just like, from what I can see, it's a few simple shapes. Like it's not too complicated, but there's lots of room for like varying complexity and varying, like you can get an idea across with simple concepts, but then if you want, you can take those farther and use different skills for those. So that's the what I want to do. And then my goals with this project are to be able to learn how to texture things. I have no idea how to do that. Improve my composition skills, just because I'm anticipating most of these scenes to be like pretty simple, so I won't have that much to work with. So I want to be able to make a strong like a strong image with just a few simple shapes and stuff. I also want to learn how to import things. A lot of the things that I'm looking at have like Roman style statues, heads and stuff. So I want to be able to figure out how to just get that in there. I don't have to model that myself, I'm sure. Maybe work with some character models. I didn't include any of the inspiration for characters in this slideshow, but there are a couple artists that I follow who almost solely do work with like 3D models, and they're still like pretty simple. Well, I mean, I don't know. They look simple, but I don't know the complexities behind it. So I'd like to experiment with that if I have time. So like maybe some scenes and then just some interesting models. And then also just like I want to improve my compositing skills. So my ability to make something in Blender and then make it totally different and something else and incorporate all of these different elements. Like I was thinking like making something in Blender, making some pixel art, bringing that in and like incorporating that all in Photoshop. And of course, I just want to know how to use Blender a little bit more, because I still don't really know how to. And learn how to make this kind of art, because it's something that I've been admiring for a very long time. So here's some sort of inspiration. Like they're really simple, there's not a lot in them, but they still definitely get the point across. So I think like with this kind of stuff, there's a lot of room to make it however like simple or complex you want it to. And then there's definitely a lot you can do in Photoshop or anything else after you render it. So yeah.
So this is kind of the stuff you're thinking about making. Okay, so yeah, like the modeling, maybe you're not even modeling the stuff yourself, or you're not modeling all of it, but you might download.
Yeah, like I'll maybe, here, I can keep sharing. I'll maybe make like, I'll make some shapes, like sort of what I was doing with the city. So nothing too complicated, just like interesting shapes that I can make however they want. Like this arch thing is really cool. I can do something like that fairly easily, I think, and still be able to make something cool. Because my skill level right now is not very high, so I'm trying to think of things that I can make that's not too advanced that I still am happy with.
That's good. And I like that idea too, I think, of being kind of iterative with what you're learning. So, like, what do you know now? And then
Mhm.
what do you really kind of want to know by the end of this project? That's the way I would think about it. And so you can kind of make that modest. I think that's a good idea. But it looks like to me, I mean, I think you're going to have, and this is where I would probably articulate this as well as you can right now. I mean, the things like just by looking through these images, what are you going to have to know? Go ahead and thumb back through these a little bit more. I just want to kind of look. It's like, well, like reflections. So actually materials are going to be really important. It looks like, you've got this mirror, that reflection can be tricky. You have the reflection of the floor there, the shininess. There's some kind of, so that's going to be big. Looks like lighting is going to be really important.
Yeah.
We'll talk about a little bit about that today. We'll kind of get you started on that. But don't try to do it all at once, like
Yeah.
little pieces at once, and then make sure you kind of track that progress, like things like water, if you wanted to do a water simulation.
Yeah, and that's another thing with like doing multiple images. I could like use one image and in that just focus solely on lighting, or like have my main focus of learning be on lighting, and then move on to another thing that's all about materials, and then like as I learn more, combine those
Maybe
skills
start
that are
simple.
images.
One thing I like about these scenes is that they're deliberately simple.
Yeah.
And there's like the emissive shader for like the neon tube, and a lot of the stuff you're going to find tutorials on, because like how to make a neon tube, like where you don't have to necessarily learn all about 3D ray tracing theory and all that. You just kind of find the how to, but reflections, things like that are going to be important. Like landscape, those look like kind of procedurally generated landscapes. So well, looks like fun. Cool. Nice. All right. Thanks, Angel. Okay, who else has some stuff to present?
I could.
All right. Bring it on in.
Okay.
I could share stuff, but I don't have any pictures.
Okay, that's all right. We can just kind of want to get a sense of what people are doing.
Okay, then if you guys don't mind me talking. I'm going to continue my Chroma City, get a couple of more models in. I'd like to create a really fancy model for a dress, like a superstar kind of thing coming out of the Rainbow House.
Okay.
I also want to create a Godzilla monster that I can animate destroying the city and work with particle effects in that one, and it basically want to destroy what I created.
All right, great. Cool. Sounds good.
But,
so you're going to keep going with what you got. That's great.
Yep. That's essentially what I'd like to finish off this term with.
Sounds good. Cool. All right, thanks, Kitty. All right, who else has something?
I was gonna. Yeah.
Bring it on.
So I was also planning on continuing what I already did with my because like I've mentioned, that sort of pixel low poly style is sort of what I want to do. So I want to make sort of a mock-up screenshot or short animation clip that's sort of based on sort of classic RPGs like the older Legend of Zelda games. And the specific style I'm going for is very much inspired by, I don't know if any of y'all have seen the game Octopath Traveler. There's a screenshot of it down here. But it's got this really interesting graphic style, which is these, a lot of 2D object sprites and these low poly environments, but with really gorgeously rendered environments. And I want to have a GUI, because I know in a lot of 3D games, you've got the GUI as a actual object that's being rendered in the scene, but it's just a flat texture that's a fixed distance away from the camera. So that's very neat to me. So I want to just figure out how to do that in Blender, and characters and environment. And I want to figure out how to use billboarding, which I mentioned last class, I believe. And I want to elaborate on the kit that I made. I just want to add more parts and more textures and stuff. And for research, I want to figure out what I can do with different materials, like giving things different textures and making things light sources. And I want to figure out if like I can make only certain parts of a model emit light, so I can have that work with the textures, that sort of thing. And I want to see how normal maps look with this art style. I want to see what I can do with that. And like I mentioned, I want to figure out billboarding and light sources and rendering. And if I get to the point where I'm doing an animation, I want to figure out physics and physics simulation and how that looks in that style. So.
Okay, cool. That's great. Thanks, Mai.
Oh.
Yeah, looks good. Cool. Who else has one?
I mean, I didn't have too much time to. Can you hear me, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
I
have
think
too
we're getting
much
some
time to.
feedback from somebody. It might be Mai.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so I was just gonna probably continue with what I was gonna do. I want to try adding multiple particle effects to it so that I can add diversity to the scenery. I also, since it was built on a mountain, I want to see if I can create something like the Lord of the Rings, some sort of like castle on it. Again, not going to be too complex because actually I don't have much experience with texturing, and I haven't really gone into that at all this term. So I want to create something different, add a little bit more to it, but then go into the main focus of texturing and making it look more impressive than it actually is through the texture.
Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, great. I'm just taking some notes.
Sure.
So cool.
I think that's going to be
right.
it for me, though.
Okay.
I don't know if I, with the animation course and everything,
Okay.
how much I can really get. So that's why I'll start with that. And if I over deliver, fantastic.
Sounds good. Okay. Who else?
I can go.
You can go.
Sure.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
No,
Go
you
for
go
it,
first.
Michaela, and then next, yeah. So Michaela
Okay.
first.
I just wanted to create like a little lighthouse scene.
Okay.
I thought that would be fun.
Okay.
I don't know if I can get like a water kind of texture or effect, but I at least want to just build a little lighthouse that has a light emitting from it.
Okay.
And then just focus on that, and then maybe just bring it into Photoshop and you know.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I would really say for all of these, white box something out really quick. So just with boxes, basically. Don't worry about the modeling. Don't worry about the textures. Don't worry about the lighting or anything. But just white box out so you get a sense of what you're looking at, and then kind of start thinking about your camera shots, because that's going to make a big difference. And then start gathering references. And that's what these presentations can be good for. You know, it's like you throw this stuff into your Figma document. That way you're not looking around for it. And it's always there online. And you have that. And to kind of what we were doing with like Andrew's drawing, you can draw right into Figma, which I really like, you know, which is why I like it better than like using like Google Slides or something. I guess you can kind of do it in there, but it's just not as groovy. So that way you can kind of think about this as you're whiteboarding a project. You're thinking about you've got to lay it out first. I think like do some of that. This goes for everybody, you know, do some of this kind of planning, whiteboarding process. That's the kind of thing that will really get you thinking productively. I think you'll be able to get a hell of a lot more done if you kind of can articulate exactly what you're trying to do. It's not so much about the precision, but you're like, as you're articulating it, then you understand what you're trying to do. What I see a lot of times is that in the description, it's not quite there yet as far as the particulars. And like, you know, do some concept art, do some rough sketches. It can be super, super, super sketchy. Think about how do you visually think? If you don't like sketching, you don't have to sketch. That's where I think white boxing can kind of almost take the place of a sketch. You know what I mean? So kind of think about, because this is going to be a big part of it, is how do you present an idea before you've made the idea, before you've had time to work it all out and, get everything done. So Andrew with the sketches is kind of showing us that's one way to do it. That's a traditional way to do it, but you can also do it with white boxing or, I don't know, collage things together. So cool. Yeah, sounds great. So you've got, and then you're going to think about all those different pieces of that. You're talking about water. You're talking about lighting effects and probably what we call volumetric lighting, like the way that a lighthouse is, it's usually foggy. That's why you have a lighthouse, and then the lights going out there, and because it's foggy, you get the illuminated beam that looks really awesome and lighthousey, and that kind of thing. So that'd be fun. Yeah, that sounds good. Cool. All right, thanks, Michaela. All right, who else has some ideas here? Oh,
yes,
yeah.
I'll continue.
Bring on in. Yeah.
All right. I don't have any pictures, but I do have a plan. I do want to continue on with my polygonal sort of city.
Okay.
I think I'm going to work on the setting a little bit more in the landscaping.
Okay.
I kind of think it would kind of be cool to do it like as a little planetoid and have like a little city on top of it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
We'll work on also working on a background image and doing more with nodes.
Okay.
I think I kind of want to go down that path a little bit, but not too much.
Okay.
Sort of create a overall design scheme.
All right. Okay. Cool.
Among it all. So
yeah, that sounds good.
my
So you're
idea
gonna keep
for now.
going with what you've been doing. That's great. Yeah, and maybe you build out. Maybe there's a list of like, I want to make these 5 more buildings, or I want to make a bridge or a second bridge, or I want to do blah blah blah. But start to give yourself. I really want to see you guys do this. That you've got like a production board going, so that way we can, when we talk about your stuff, we can actually see it. Because like that's one of the things that's really nice to be able to just go when you don't know what someone's working on, but then you can see it. And again, like just to point out, like this to me is a pretty good idea. It gives us a pretty good sense of like, oh, this is the project right here. So this is our character. These are the questions that are starting to be asked, but we know we've got this common reference here. And if you've got your visual research around here, all the better. Because then you can pull stuff out of there. So yeah, very cool. All right. Thanks, Lise. Okay. All right. Anyone else have some stuff to share today?
I actually have a question.
Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm just curious. So obviously with white boxing, you can white box like an environment, but for like people like me, how would you white box a character?
Good question. I think basically you're going to be thinking, I would be thinking low poly to high poly. So you could start off with a base mesh and start sculpting it. You know what I mean? Like you can start, like how quickly can you put this character together? Or I think your sketch in this case is your white box for me. But you could also start to maybe think about profile and front view. So I'd like to see what this character looks like from the side, maybe.
Yeah,
I
started working on that. But for like a white box, would you just like throw a bunch of cylinders together, I guess?
No, I don't think I would necessarily do that. I mean, you could do that. I've seen people do that, like boxes and stuff like that. But I don't think you necessarily have to for this kind of a figure, this kind of a character. The other thing I would really be thinking about with your character is the kind of, how is this character actually going to be built? Because when you've got a character with a lot of clothes on, that's always the question, right? It's like, are things separate? Do you have to actually sculpt the arms or not? In this case, probably not, right? So you're probably going to be sculpting things kind of, but you could make things as separate pieces and then combine them later. So what has to match up and what doesn't? So like things like boots, those boots look like a pretty substantial modeling bit of business. They don't have to be modeled like onto the legs. You can just have them be and you don't have to make like the toes, and that kind of thing. So you can just model the boots, So that's the kind of thing that you guys should think about. Like, how the hell am I doing this? And think about what makes the most sense to me. And then we can run, you guys can run ideas by each other, run them by me, and see if that approach makes sense. So yeah, I think that you're concepting stuff out. That's kind of the white box. And then what you'll do is you'll probably find as you build it, you're gonna rough it in as much as you can. And I would probably start with a base character, like a base mesh. You don't necessarily have to model the base mesh yourself. You know, and start sculpting on it. I don't know. That's kind of my thinking.
Okay.
And then you can kind of do that trick where you select stuff off of the character and then extrude out, and then build a separate object, you know, from that, so that you can then attach however you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's great. That's great.
I had never heard like, because with white boxing, I had just never thought of it like with like character modeling before.
Yeah, I would think about it like take a base mesh and sculpt on it, and within like within like 15-20 minutes, you should have a pretty good approximation of what the character's proportions are.
Sure thing.
Like, but you shouldn't be working on that for like 6 hours. That should be a fast. If you're not there within 10 or 15 minutes, start over again. You know, like if you're just gonna move like the arm around a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Miles. Sorry for taking up so much time.
No, that's good. That's good. That's what we're here for. So who else had something? I missed who was talking.
I do.
Oh, good. Yamato. Okay.
All right, so for the deliverables, I'm gonna be trying to make some water, trees, some grass, and rocks. Put them together, something like this.
Okay.
Timeline, just basically research, make a rough, and refine it. But I already made a rough. So it's something like this.
Okay, great. Cool.
Looks good. Here are some references that I'm going to be using.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found some tutorials that I'm going to be using.
Okay.
Probably using I might use the grass top left, but found some others I might use. So I don't know, but the water and stuff, the rocks.
So the aesthetic is more of this Legend of Zelda kind of aesthetic. It's not necessarily photoreal like the photo, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Found another tutorial for the trees I might use. Depends how well meshes in with everything. But that's everything. Just bring it together and finish it.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Yeah, let's show us your green box, I guess we'll call it. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. You know, we can kind of imagine, okay, that gives us a good starting place. It's not overly elaborate, you know, but it's going to have enough in there. You're definitely going to have your hands full getting started with that. You know, the water texture is always tricky. Rocks, and how do you handle that? And it looks like you've got a good start on that. So cool. All right, thanks, Mata. That's good. Who else?
I also make a check.
Morgan.
So I'm just going to expand on like the milk carton thing that I was going to do.
Great.
But I think I want to add like a whole nother structure. So I was kind of thinking of like a soda can type thing. And just kind of like thinking realistically with like the other classes I have and stuff. I'm just going to finish up like fixing textures on my first structure and then work on building the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have time, I'd like to composite more of a background just to kind of develop the scene a little bit more, so it's not just two random objects.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd really like to work on lighting and like creating kind of a glow with emissions on the windows.
Cool.
And then like another extra thing is I'd like to work on some like human figures, just kind of basic things. And so I was thinking maybe just doing 2D renders and bringing them in, since I'm not super familiar with like the modeling quite yet.
Okay.
So those are just a couple things.
Cool.
And then so some of my concept art for like the main scene, and then just like rough drafts of kind of what I'm planning.
Those are cool.
Thanks.
I like those concepts. That bench is hilarious too.
Some of them are kind of a stretch, but we'll see. And then my goals is just to create like kind of a complete scene, and then improve my understanding of Blender, since this is really the first time I've worked with it. And so I want to work on lighting and textures mostly.
Okay.
I think that's why I'm going to kind of keep pretty simple model structures.
Cool.
Yeah. And then so far I've only researched the concrete texture and some lighting stuff, but I'm hoping
awesome.
to look a little bit more into that.
Cool. Great. Thanks, Morgan. Who else has some stuff?
I have something it's kind of a short presentation, but
yeah, go for it. Ah.
Muted. There we go. So I'm calling it a driven city because well, Miles and I were talking about it the other day, but I like cars a lot. So kind of using the modular city kit that I've already got with the road system and kind of fleshing out a city design in that. And then kind of finishing that up more, making some more building designs so that way it's not all the same, like one building forever. And then adding more traffic lights and neon signs to help kind of stick with the aesthetic, which I'll get to in a second, and just adding more light to the scene. And then assuming those things don't take a terrible amount of time, then potentially modeling a car, which having tried to do that many times in the past, we'll see about that one. So if there isn't enough time to do that, trying to find one online that isn't horribly expensive and also usable, which might take as long as trying to model one. And then I've been wanting to learn how to animate more in Blender. And so animating that for use. And then the other problem that I might run into is rendering out a however long little video I end up making out of this, which, as I'm sure everybody knows, rendering takes a lot of time and resources, which is time that I can't use my computer. So potentially trying to get my old computer to run as kind of a render farm, because it'll take longer to render, but it's not my main computer, so I don't necessarily care how long it's going to take to an extent, as long as it can get it done. But you know, if it's going to take it, if it would take 3 hours to render on my main computer, but 4 days to render on my old machine, then it's worth it to just run it on my main computer. So that again comes down to time and kind of trying to figure out how much is worth it. And then oh no, that's in Figma. Hang on, sorry, got a little discombobulated there. So started making a list of things that I would need to finish for the city. So buildings, obviously the road, stoplights and stop signs, signs for the buildings, updating UV textures to fit together better, So like I've got a T section of the road, and right now the yellow line just goes all the way to the end. So trying to make it so that way there's a center section that doesn't have lines, or figuring out some way to make that look proper. And then this is where the aesthetic comes in. So the main concept would be an outrun style piece. So like kind of 80s-esque graphics, similar to Vaporwave, but more like more hard edges than soft edges. But I really like the kind of color scheme from Vaporwave, that like blue and purple. So kind of combining the two, like Vaporwave and Outrun, and making them, or trying to make them mesh together. And then I started to draw up a plan for the city streets, and then I was going to flesh out a building design from there. And I'm doing it from a top-down view for where the city streets are going to go, because it's just the easiest to try and quickly draw out where it's going to go, and like where the turns are and stuff like that. And since I've stuck with a kind of boxy design for the turns and intersections, I'm just making everything straight lines and going from there. That's kind of what I have right now.
Yeah, that's great though. I mean, I like the fact you're thinking about it top down. That's one of those great things. Throw that on the whiteboard. It's like, okay, this is our basic layout. Then you can make changes to it as you're doing it.
Yeah.
Be thinking about it. Say, oh, I think it's great to get in and start drawing directly into it. So you can be like, oh yeah, let's have it curve around over here. Yeah, maybe swing it out this way. That way you can do this stuff so much faster by hand and just gesturally than you can by like trying to plot it out. So.
Yeah.
Good. So cool. Yeah, looks good.
Hey, don't ignore me.
Cool.
I'm finishing your sushi for you.
All right.
Did you bring sushi for the whole class, or?
Yeah. I'm hungry. All right, cool. Who's next?
I can go.
Okay, great.
So I'm continuing the city. So overview, it's a large-scale 3-layered city created in Maya, and then most of the things in it are going to be like low-poly buildings and environment. So for deliverables, I want all 3 layers of the city to be filled out and completed, and then I want to at least take like 2 kind of render shots from each layer just to show it, because I'm going to try to make each layer sort of its own thing. So like top layer will be mostly city, second layer I'm still trying to figure out. And then stretch goals would be like actual texturing, proper lighting, and then finer details in the environment.
Don't ignore me.
For these are some of the references I have that I'm using for my project. And then this is my current progress, which is what I showed when we presented last time. And that's the top layer. So this is pretty much done, as in like the basic concept. So I'm going to start working on the second layer now. So for research, there's an area on the bottom layer I want to add a whole bunch of grass. I've been trying to figure that out, and so still trying to figure out how to do that without it crashing Maya. Creating lights such as street lights, because the roads do have street lights on them. And then how to work with the actual lighting within Maya's Arnold rendering engine, because that's kind of similar to the Cycles engine in Blender. and that's it.
Was that Josh? I think your mic's on, Josh.
Oh, my fault.
Right? I was like, cool. Yeah, it looks great, Ryan. I think that's going to be really fun. I think you're going to, again, just fleshing all that stuff out is going to be a hoot and a holler. This will be fun. Just between texturing, the lighting, volumetrics, all that, there's quite a bit to go there. So very nice. Cool. All righty. Nice. Anyone else have some stuff to show today?
I can
All right.
share.
All right, do it,
Let's
Miles.
get the presentation up. Okay. So my plan is to kind of like make a world in Blender that I can then composite actors into.
Oh, cool.
Kind of do some Ian Hubert-esque stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the plan? Basically, like as simply put as possible. It's gonna be a lot harder in actuality. But I gotta get some base footage of some people interacting in our world. Watch a just insane amount of Ian Hubert tutorials and tutorials from other people, of course, to figure out all the nitty-gritty details I'm gonna need to learn how to pull this off. Slap into Blender and make a cool, hopefully, looking world around that video, and then composite all together so it doesn't look bad, which I think is going to be the hardest part, is really just matching the like look of the footage and what is in Blender. So the deliverables, kind of have like 6 that I can for sure get around to. Is number 1 is the tracked footage. So just making sure that in Blender, the camera is has the same motion as the camera I filmed with, which I should theoretically be able to do. Who knows? Then creating a kind of like white box main building around that footage to kind of make it look like the camera is outside of an apartment or something like that. Then the background white boxes just to kind of flesh out just, the areas that the main building isn't in. And then going back and making sure that the foreground looks at least okay. Hopefully better than okay, but I think for something this big, I'm just okay with okay. And then making the background look okay, and then having a nice rendered animation at the end of all of this.
Cool. So it's going to be animated. Nice.
Yeah. And then what's it all going to look like? Hopefully something like this, but like not as cool. So I really love like the cyberpunk synthwave look of like neon signs and like really harsh colors that aren't natural to everyday life. So hopefully I can get it somewhere around this aesthetically, like kind of like packed in big city.
Cool. Well, so you guys are going to have like a neon festival or something. Everyone's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Good. Looks great. That's going to be a blast. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. That should be a hoot.
As do I.
Cool. All right. Anyone else want to go today? We can also keep looking at stuff on Tuesday. I wanted to cover a little bit about lighting today. So if one more person is really jazzed up to go. Otherwise we can look at stuff on Tuesday too. So
if nobody else is going to go, I have some like earlier concepts of the character I had. He has somewhat notes. 1 second. It's like actually on paper. 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. Geez, 1 second. Hi everybody. I'm a mess.
Hmm.
So like, this is what I've got. It's like super low res because my camera sucks for some reason. But I'm just like showing that I had stuff before this, so
Mm-hmm.
it's
cool. Get it all in there. Just do your quick.
Oh my god, it's like a Twitter banner. I don't know how to do it. Okay. Oh geez, like he's gonna have a hat probably, but
yeah.
God, I don't know why it won't like focus me. It's probably because like this is like older, so like the
Throw it into your
lines
Figma
kind of.
board. Just throw it into the Figma board. That way it's there. You got it.
God, I gotta scan it later. I'm not doing that.
No, but even if you don't, because I'm also I'm horrible about scanning stuff too. I was thinking about it. Like if you can just use your phone, it's kind of okay for whiteboards. Because like I think like for whiteboarding stuff, just take a crappy phone photo is fine. You can adjust a little bit if you need to, but like just get it in there so you got it. And then you can fancy it up later, and then you can scan it if you feel like, okay, I'm going to do something kind of nicer. Then scanning is definitely your friend, especially if you're doing stuff with ink and things like that. It's worth scanning it. So, but yeah, it looks good. Actually, I like that. It's, like throw it all together. You want to collect all this stuff into that whiteboard.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that looks great. Anyone else? Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about lighting, because I think that's the next step for the renders that people had shown for their projects on Tuesday, that things were looking really good and looking cool. And I think a little bit of lighting, I'll just show kind of some basics of lighting, like super basic stuff, just to introduce people to some kind of concepts that you might not know about or might not have heard about. And then this is, getting into specific styles and different types of lighting. We won't necessarily get there, but I just wanted to give people kind of a broad overview today. Things that'll kind of instantly help you get some payoff. And before we do that, let's just jump over here. So lighting. There are a bunch of terms that you're going to come across in lighting, and that can be very intimidating, and you don't have to understand them all at once. And I think we were saying the other day that I think learning this stuff, it's much more similar to learning a spoken language, that it's not about getting everything perfect and expecting that the first time you open your mouth and speak in a foreign language, you're speaking perfectly. It's like people that really can learn a foreign language, it's usually about just kind of diving in at the bar when you're kind of tipsy and hanging out with people and laughing and having a good time. It's not necessarily going back and looking at grammar books. And so I think what you guys are doing, I think already in 3D is cool. You guys are kind of doing that. You're jumping in, you're making stuff. You're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. And I think that's keep that spirit, because that's the way you actually learn and will get to know what you are doing. And you're already learning a lot already. So the difference between what you guys were doing on week 1 and now is really quite impressive. So you want to keep that spirit. Don't just because you've been doing Blender for 3 or 4 weeks or 3 or 4 months or something, don't let that make you think you should know what you're doing. Keep that beginner's attitude, that open mind, and you'll kind of enjoy yourself more, and you'll probably learn more too because you are enjoying yourself more. So with lighting, I'm just going to throw some terms up here. I'll give you a really quick, cruddy definition of them, but don't worry about these. I just kind of want to throw these up here for reference because they do come up. One is ambient. What does ambient mean? I don't know. I think I know. Anybody? Ambient.
Yes.
Who was that, Leaf? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, talking about ambience?
Yeah.
It's sort of just like the mood you set using light.
Okay, great. So we can think about it as mood. And what do we mean by mood?
So like we'll take my sunset, for example,
Okay.
in my little polygonal cityscape. So just sort of setting like a nice like red tone, making it sort of pop out, and giving a sort of happy, sort of chill vibe.
Okay. So it's kind of, and if we think about what that is, this is kind of the effect, would be the mood or the vibe. And we achieve that mood or vibe through an overall kind of environment wide, like through the whole thing, what you would say is the general vibe, environment wide, like color scheme, let's say. And color and light are synonymous here. So what is the overall environment wide color and light scheme? I don't know, something like that. Or not even scheme, just overall color and light. Another word you'll hear is occlusion. Does anyone know what occlusion means?
It's like the blocking out of the light source.
Yep. Blocking, or
like when you put on yellow lenses, it blocks out green.
Yeah, so it literally just means like blocking out or obstruction. So how things block each other and occlude each other from, let's say, light and shadow. That's what kind of occlusion refers to a lot of times. So there is a term called ambient occlusion. And I was just thinking about, it's funny because if you think about, ambient occlusion, which is actually, this refers to, it's a specific, this is a CG fake to help with shadows. So this isn't an actually scientific thing. This is like it's a CG kind of rendering fake to help shadows. But this is what those terms mean independently of each other. How about baking? What does baking mean?
I know one term for baking.
Okay. Yep. What? Making donuts and cakes.
Yeah, pastries.
Okay. Basically means to pre-calculate complex stuff. So for example, if it's kind of a cheat, it's a cheating way. Let's say like you were going to go on a television show about being able to do math really fast, and someone says like, well, I'm going to give you two numbers and you have to give me the product of those two numbers, right? And so it could be like 16,793 and negative 0.1937 or something. And so if you were to bake those calculations, you would give the person the two numbers in advance and let them use a calculator to multiply them out. And so that when you ask them the question on live television, they would already know the answer and they would look really smart. That's what baking is. So it's a way that in which you pre-calculate something that's complicated that would take a lot of time to render or to try to calculate, especially in real time, like in a game situation. You use baking, and there are a lot of different places where you'll kind of hear that term. So you'll bake things like particles, which are complicated. You'll bake things like physics simulations and cloth simulations, or hair, which are complicated. You'll bake lighting solutions, as we'll see, that are complicated as well. So the other term we'll hear a lot is sampling. Or samples. And so what do we mean by that? That's just basically the number, so we're just, again, these are kind of simplified definitions, the number of calculations. Like I said, you don't have to know this stuff, but I want you just to kind of be familiar with it, associated with a particular process. So if you have a light, or your render settings, if you have a higher sample rate or sample size, that means it's going to have to go out and do more calculations, and it's going to take longer. This is a really hacky definition, so don't quote me on this, but you'll hear this. Ray tracing or ray casting. Anyone want to take a stab at this? Someone can probably define this better than I can, right? It's actually really fascinating. I mean, I've never studied it in any detail, but it's basically, it's the way that a 3D simulation simulations of, let's say, light and surfaces are made. And I'll try not to go too deep into the weeds here, but like if you have a spotlight, and you have an object here, and you have another object here, the spotlight is basically going to be throwing out rays that are meant to be kind of act like light rays. And so light rays emanate from a source, and then if they're kind of coming out from a particular shape, you won't have light rays going out this way. So these light rays are directional. And they move at the speed of light, so they're fast. So you're not too worried. And so they're directional, and so they have a direction, and they also have a distance. So what'll happen is that you can calculate out whether a light ray intersects something or not. And so if it intersects, like let's say this one here, let's make one here that goes out, and then it misses that box, so it wouldn't illuminate the box. That light ray wouldn't illuminate the box, but it would hit this, and then it would bounce, possibly. Now, let's have it do this. In old days of 3D, and in the default for something like the Eevee renderer, the only calculation that gets made is this ray goes out and it hits the surface, and that's it. And it reports back that it hit something, and so that becomes light. That's where you start to calculate light. And so it says, make that object brighter there on that particular area. So you might have, lots of these things coming out. So that's why I'll jump back here to Blender for a sec. Just turn this off in a minute. In Blender, let's open this up. So in Blender right now, this is in Eevee. There's a light source. Actually, I have this sun light source, which is up here right there. So the light's coming down at this angle. And it's coming down and it's hitting this sphere. And so this sphere is illuminated by the sun object up here. Same with this box, it's hitting this box. But the sphere is occluding or blocking those sun rays. So it doesn't cast light here. And the box is blocking the sun rays as well, so it's not casting light back here. And that's where we get shadows. And so shadows have to be added into a 3D render. They're not a natural part of lighting in 3D. They have to be calculated kind of separately. So what's happening here though, is we're getting this, the light is not bouncing, because what happens in real life is something more like this, is that light comes down, let's say from the sun, and it's shooting out all these rays coming down. And then if light, let's say there's a bunch of grass down here, these rays come down and they hit, and then they bounce around. They hit the little blades of grass and they bounce around, and they hit the underside of a flower, and they kind of bing, bing, bing. And then some of them bounce off, you know, but not that many, you know, I don't know, they might come off over here. And so how light bounces is really kind of the science of ray tracing and making these simulations. So that was, I don't know, we could talk more and more about that. It's actually really kind of interesting, cool thing. But that's just to kind of get us started, that ray tracing is this, that you do these calculations. You don't do them, the computer does them. It does a lot of them in a short amount of time to kind of help simulate what that light is. So to get light to bounce properly, we have another term called, let's see what we call it. We could call it, I think in Blender you'll hear it described as indirect lighting or illumination. You'll also hear it referred to as global illumination, GI. Light bounces. So I'll go back to Blender here. And we're in Eevee right now. So in the render settings here, it says Eevee. Now, if I switch this to cycles, you're going to notice a pretty big change here that's happening. There's the noise. So what do you guys notice is happening when we switched? So here's, oops. So here's cycles. I'll turn off this other stuff here. So here's cycles. And here's Eevee. What changed? So
Wait,
Eevee and cycles. Here's cycles.
It looks fuzzier in cycles.
Yeah, you've got some bloom going on.
Yeah, okay.
It's got lights bouncing.
The light's bouncing, yeah, because, and we know it's bouncing because there's blue, right? So like if I, it looks, this ball is white. And the reason why is the ball white up here is because there's nothing bouncing on top of it, but there's stuff bouncing up from the bottom here. Whoa. No. This red is bouncing up. It's going, the light's coming down and hitting the floor, and it's bouncing up and turning this red. And when we come over here, whoops, the light's hitting this wall and bouncing over and it's turning this side blue. And here it's kind of mixing and it's turning kind of purple because it's red and blue being mixed together. And so that's global illumination or indirect lighting or bounces, reflections. So in the old days, so if we're looking at Eevee, this was like, so when I was first starting to do 3D, this was it. It's like light comes and you're saying it's kind of binary. It's either illuminating something or it's not, you know, and then it's not, it doesn't bounce. So there's no interaction between this blue color and this sphere, and there's no interaction between this red color and this sphere because there's no global illumination. And so it looks very kind of relatively flat and artificial. It looks okay. It doesn't look like terrible, but there's a pretty big difference. Now in Eevee, you can get bounce. You can get indirect lighting, but you have to use what's called a volumetric, a volume, what's called an irradiance volume. So I'll go ahead and turn that back on. And go here. And so this is what an irradiance volume looks like. It's it's basically a little cube with these dots in it. And these dots represent places that calculations will be made to simulate bounce lighting. But the catch here is that they have to be baked. It won't do it in real time. Cycles will try to do it in real time, but it'll do it really slowly because it's really complicated to make those calculations. So but if we go over here to our rendering tab and we go down to our indirect lighting and we've added one of these irradiance volumes, we can say bake indirect lighting. And then it's going to calculate it down here. It's going to take a little while to calculate. Because it's a complex calculation. But what it's doing is it's storing all that data of the light angles and all the vector bounces, and it's storing it so that it's like, okay, I got it. It took me a long time to figure that out. But now if we make changes to the scene, like if we move the light around or change the light quality, it's going to you have to rebake it. So it's kind of a trick. And so in video games with complex 3D environments, light baking is usually really essential. Now this is probably changing on the cutting edge of things. Like that's why you guys have probably been hearing about NVIDIA and real-time ray tracing and all that. That's the kind of the holy grail that people are after. But you know, in this day and age, baking is still a really big part of kind of hacking. You want global illumination, but you can't calculate it on the fly. So now we can come in here in Eevee and we're getting this really nice light bounce going on. And there are a bunch of settings in here for changing the samples, like how many bounces are you calculating. So there are a lot of like little adjustments you can make in here, but you can see that sure enough, that sphere is getting really blue because it's picking up this really strong blue from this. And now I think we can still move the object around, and I don't think we have to rebake it necessarily. It'll still, so as I move this away from the blue really becomes less and less. And as I move it closer, you can see the blue get more and more. And same with the red. You know, as we move this closer, red will get, now it's kind of hard to see here, but, and it might need to rebake, you know, so like I think yeah. So you'll see this used in video games for things like the environment. So the character is going to be moving, and so the character wouldn't have, and usually anything that's moving won't necessarily have that kind of bounce light on it, but the rest of the environment can have that nice bounce light on it. So. Cool. And I'll just write that down. So, so that's an irradiance volume. And so you might, it's called a light probe. That's the other term. So if I just start this over. So by default, we don't have any bounces going on because we're using Eevee. And so to get that going, let's just make a quick demo of that. All right, so we'll make this, I'll make sphere. And we'll shade smooth, okay. And yeah, oops, what did I just do? Oh, I hit it. All right. So shadows, this is just really quickly to point out that the kind of the roughness of the shadow edge is something that you can work on the sampling or the shadow map resolution. That's a whole other thing. But for right now, let's say, let's change this color. So we'll make a new material. And let's make it green this time. All right. So we had a really strong cast. So we're not getting any light bounce. And so in Eevee, what we do is we go up here and add a light probe irradiance volume. And then we can just kind of scale this out. And we want it to be so, I haven't really studied this all that much. I just kind of been hacking around with it. But we basically want these dots to be just above the surface. So otherwise they'll get occluded and you won't get a proper calculation. So this is something, you can play around with. And so now we've got all that enclosed, and basically the more of these dots you have closer to the objects that you're interested in, the more intent, the better the calculation will be. And you can add, where is it? I forget where you add details. Someone might know. Maybe it's on the object. No, it's probably here. Stability, probe, distance, fall off, intensity. No, that's not it. Oh well, I'll remember at some point. But now, once we've got the irradiance volume, we can go back to our renderer and tell it to bake. And it'll calculate down here. And you can see the green is now affecting the light bounce. So that'll be good. I think, like I was thinking, Morgan, your renders of the milk carton city, where it looked kind of flat. One of the things that makes a render look really flat is not having that kind of light bounce. So you can either render in cycles, and then you'll kind of get that, or you can start to play around with an irradiance volume in Eevee. And the advantage of Eevee is that it's faster, A couple other tricks that we have is something called HDRI or HDR. And this is high dynamic range. And then HDRI, this imaging or image. And so this is basically, it's an image with a higher than normal data range that is collecting a lot more information in the light and dark areas than you kind of technically need maybe for a photograph. It's got extra, you know, it's more than you can see. And so this can be used to, you can use an HDR image to, as a lighting source. And let's kind of demonstrate that here. So if we, so I'll delete that light. We're still getting some light bounce because there's kind of some ambient light here. But let's try to add an HDR image. And so we go up here to our world settings and we'll say use nodes. And for the surface, we'll choose an environment shader. So let's go add shader. And we'll use an environment shader. Yeah. And let's do it. I'll just do it in the shading tab. I'll jump to the shading tab. And I'll add, oh, I need to add the texture first. Add an environment texture. And I just so happen to have an HDR image. And you can find these online. There's some really good free sources of these things. And I'll hook this up like that. And this is in the world tab here, not the object tab. And okay. Then I should be able to drop back here to the layout. And now we have this picture in here, this HDR image. And it's basically wrapped around my whole scene here. And I think I'll just get rid of all this for right now. And I'll just show this by itself. Let's just put a sphere here. No, I changed the default. No, I didn't change the default material. Oh, that's interesting. It was still green because you have to go back into the bake settings and delete the lighting cache. So I was like, why is this still green? All right, so now what you know, you can kind of see a little bit is that this is being illuminated by the light information in this scene. So the sun in the picture is up here. So that's the direction of this light. And so you can see over here, when we're away from the sun, we've got shadow or occlusion, rather, I should say. It's not a shadow, it's just, the light is occluded from there, but we've got a highlight here where the light is striking the surface there. So HDR is a really great hack for lighting because it just takes care of everything. And then you can turn off the this picture, so you don't want to have that as part of your render. And where do I put that? Where do I turn that? I'm totally spacing where to do that. So anyway, we'll look that up. So anyway, that's cool. That's HDR. And that's probably the fastest way to get kind of nice default lighting in your scene without having to go any deeper than that. So like here's an example. Like you can kind of see this is pretty neat, really. So this is taking a while to come in here. This little pillar thing I made, but you can kind of see it's really subtle. You get this nice little shadow going on here. It probably look nicer even in Eevee or in Cycles. Yeah, so you're getting this really beautiful kind of like light for free. You know, you didn't have to set up all these crazy spotlights and turn on all these settings. But you're getting this really nice lighting and shadow just from that image. So that's pretty sick. Slow in Cycles, but you know, so what? You can also control the strength. So if you wanted to tone it down a little bit, we could say, let's tone this down. You could say that, but it wouldn't listen to you. Type it in. So now we'll like set it to half strength. And so that diminishes the light, or 0.1. So that HDR lighting is probably going to be your best bet for basically, like I would almost just start with that, and that way you can play around with it as much as you want, and then you can take it away. But even if you're doing like a night scene, you might just say, okay, just to kind of give me the vibe of this, you know, it gives me some kind of lighting start, and then you can go in and hack around with it. Cool. All right, well, that's what I wanted to cover today. So, and I know I need to talk to Leaf and I need to talk to Mato. So we'll confer. But yeah, so everybody else, let's like, you know, put together your presentations for Tuesday. We'll look at your presentations. Just kind of let us know what you're thinking about, what you're doing. Get some visuals, but, you know, get your whiteboards together basically so we could just look at them as kind of a work in progress. All right. Well, any other questions? So yeah, Mato and Leaf, right? That's who we were talking to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Oh, I did actually have a question. I see we're recording this. Are you going to be posting that recording anywhere?
Yeah, I will. I will do that immediately. Yes.
Excellent.
It usually takes like a couple hours because it's got to finish processing in Zoom, and then it has to get uploaded and then to YouTube, and then YouTube has to process it. So it usually takes a couple hours, but I'll just do it bang up right when we're done.
All right, sick. That was thanks, because everything you just said is like extremely useful.
Yeah, and there, you know, if you know, I'll post as well. There are a couple of tutorials that are really good for this stuff. I'll just throw those on the Discord, so you guys can. There's a really good one on that little using an Irradiance volume that was really nice, and then just short, like 5-6 minutes, and then there's another There's a couple, I think, just on HDR that I'll just throw out there. So.
Awesome.